Hello from Halifax. This is Jo with Jo to the World Creations, and today we're going to be making my easy crochet bookmark pattern. This is a very simple and very quick pattern, and today I'm going to get right to the tutorial. Everything that you need to know about this pattern, such as the yarn type and size and hook size and all those other details, are available in the free pattern, which is on my website, and there's a link to that in the description below this video. All right, let's get started. So with my yarn and my hook, we are going to start by making a slip knot. And inserting our hook and pulling it tight. So I'm going to chain 11, and that makes a bookmark that is approximately 2 inches wide. But if you want to make your bookmark have a different width, just make more or less starting chains in multiples of 2 plus 1, meaning any number that's an odd number of starting chains. But I'm going to chain 11. With 11 starting chains made, we are going to be working in the third chain from the hook. So that's the first, that's the second, this is the third. In the third chain from the hook, we're going to single crochet. Now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip the next chain. In the following chain, we'll single crochet. Now we're going to chain 1, skip the next chain. In the following chain, single crochet. Chain 1, skip the next chain. In the following chain, single crochet. Skip the next chain, and in the very last chain, we'll single crochet. So we should have 5 single crochet stitches made across row 1. To start round 2, we're going to chain 2 and turn. So chain 1, chain 2, and turn. We are going to be working into the gap spaces created from the first row. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by this. If you look closely, you can see the very last single crochet stitch we made, and then there's a bit of a gap in between that and the second last single crochet stitch that we made. So this right here is the very first gap space. Now it's a little harder to see when you turn it over and are actually working in the right direction, but it's still there. So right in between the very last single crochet and the second last one, we are going to single crochet into that gap space. So we've chained 2, and we just single crochet right into that gap space. Now we're going to chain 1 and work into the next gap space. So that is the space between the next 2 single crochet stitches right here underneath the chain 1 that we did in between, where we skipped a chain. That created a gap space. So that's the second gap space we're going to work into. So after chaining 1, we single crochet into that second gap space. Chain 1 again and work into the next gap space. And I'll tell you, this gets much easier in the next row, but this is definitely the trickiest part, is just to see where these gap spaces are. So it helps to stretch out your work a little bit, and you can always flip it over because it is easier to see exactly where those gap spaces are. But we can see that these 2 little bumps is the next single crochet stitch, And then the one before that is this little bump here. So this is the third gap space that we're going to work into. So we've chained one, let's single crochet into the next gap space. Chain one. And let's work into the next gap space. Again, feel free to stretch out your work so you can really see where it is. These two bumps together created, it's the back of the next single crochet, and then there's another single crochet stitch. So we're going to work in between those into the gap space. Single crochet, chain one, and for the very last stitch, we are going to work into the space between the last single crochet, which is actually the first one that we created from the previous row, and the first two starting chains that we made. Remember, we worked into the third chain from the hook? So these are the first two starting chains that we made. And we're going to work in between that first single crochet stitch and those chains. So we've chained one, let's single crochet into that last stitch here. Single crochet. So that completes round two. You should have a total of 5 single crochet stitches made. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. To start round 3, we are going to chain 2 and turn. Now it's going to get a lot easier to see where exactly we need to work into. So we're going to work into the first gap space, which is right in between these 2 single crochet stitches. Again, feel free to stretch out your work to really see where that gap is. So it's right in between the 2 stitches into this big gap space. It's not too big because we're working with a small hook here, but into that gap space, we are going to single crochet. Chain 1. Let's work into the next gap space, which is between the next 2 single crochet stitches. Single crochet, chain 1, into the next gap space, which is again between the next 2 single crochet stitches. Chain 1. And in between the last 2 single crochet stitches, we are going to once again single crochet, chain 1, and then we're going to work our last stitch in between the last, which was actually the first from the previous row, but for us it's the last single crochet stitch that we can see here, and the 2 turning chains. So in here, this is the smallest gap that we have to work into, but we're still going to work into it. Now that we've chained 1, let's single crochet into the space between the single crochet and the turning chains. So once again, you should have 5 single crochet stitches completed, and that finishes row 3. For the rest of the pattern, we're going to do the exact same thing. It's the exact same row, repeated until your desired height. To start, we're going to chain 2 and turn, working into the first gap space between the first 2 single crochet stitches. We're going to single crochet and chain 1, work into the next gap space, single crochet and chain 1. In between the next 2 single crochet stitches into that gap space, single crochet and chain 1. Into the last 2 single crochet stitches into the gap space, we're going to single crochet and chain 1. And then the very last stitch is the gap in between the last single crochet stitch and the 2 turning chains. There's a gap in there. It's hard to work into, but still work into it. Single crochet. And that is the entire pattern. So continue doing that same row over and over until your desired height I made my bookmark 7 inches, which is approximately 30 rows, which you're welcome to do, or you can create a bookmark that's smaller or larger. When you've finished all the rows that you've repeated over and over until your desired height, come back to the video and we'll put on the tassels together. For the purpose of this video, I'm just going to finish off the bookmark in this little swatch here, but by now, hopefully you have reached your desired height. I'm going to show you exactly what to do next, but I'm just using my little swatch here. So after you've completed any number of rows, and you can finish on either side, it doesn't matter your exact number of rows, but all we're going to do next is just fasten off, pull your yarn through the loop, and you're going to weave in all your loose ends. So take your yarn needle and quickly weave in your loose ends and come back to the video. So with your ends now all woven in, we are going to cut yarn for the tassels. And there are 4 tassels, and they go on the bottom where the chain row is. And what we're going to do is cut 3 strands of yarn for each tassel, and each strand of yarn should be approximately 8 inches long. So you just take your yarn, your measuring tape, find approximately 8 inches and cut that. So you are going to need 12 strands of 8 inches in total. So go ahead and prepare that and come back to the video. So with our strands of yarn prepared, we are going to be attaching our tassels in 4 places, 1 on each corner and then 2 in the middle, but evenly spaced apart. So let's do that now. So again, it's the chain row that you're going to be attaching them to. Now I'm going to flip this over so it's easier to do, and I'll pick the corner to start. So try to find the best spot. It's not an exact science, but here's a good corner I'm going to work into. So I insert my hook. I take my 3 strands of yarn that are all lined up, and I'm going to put them onto my hook and pull them through. Now I put my hook down and I put my fingers in between the loop that I've created, and I'm going to grab all the strands of yarn and pull them through. And I'm going to pull them through. I don't make them too tight yet in case I need to adjust this, but now they're attached. And it doesn't matter which way you do this, whether it's on the front or back, if you can even tell the difference, but just make sure that you're doing it exactly the same on each. You're pulling it through on the same side so that all the front of the knots, you could say, are all on the same side. So we've done the first one. We'll do one more, and I think you'll get the hang of this. I put my hook into the place I want the tassels to be pulled through. I pull them through like this, insert my fingers and grab them. So you go ahead and do this for all 4 and come back and we'll cut them together. So we have 4 tassels now attached, evenly spaced out. And if you're happy with the placement, you can tighten them up a little bit by just pulling down on the knot and pulling the ends so that they're nice and tight. And then I've made my tassels approximately 2 inches long, but you can make them whatever length you'd like them to be. But the most important thing is just try to get them all to be going in the same direction. And then you just, I wish I had a really easy way, and I'm sure there is. Maybe you can leave a link in the comments of an easy way to cut tassels. I ended up doing it like this, actually. So holding them upside down and then cutting approximately 2 inches. There's probably a better way, but that's the way I've done it, and I think they look okay. And that's it. Now you have a new bookmark. I hope you enjoyed making this pattern. If you liked it, I'd be delighted if you could give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.